Can you hear me? Can you hear the microphone? Alright, I'll show you how you compile it. It's pretty easy once you get the hang of it. The model is a little bit small. Like I had to scale it in the QC file up by 4 to get it to that size. So yeah, do that. But I've got a decompiled Alex model somewhere. That one. I'll leave that. I'll put that in the upload as well, and I'll put this stuff too. Have you have you done any compiling yet, or did you have a look at the QC coding and stuff? All right. You go on this site. Okay, maybe it's not that one. Fucking. Ah. Yeah, Source is like completely different to any other engine with compiling models and stuff. Yeah, that one. Oh yeah, that's alright, that one. Really all you need to learn is QC and use this as a reference. That QC file there is pretty good. That's got everything you need, really. But that's the QC file I wrote up on screen. It's got a model name, which is the output model, and you got to put in that path there is relative to your model's path. So, have you got the SDK at least? Alright, you'll need to get the SDK because then you'll get all the compiling gear. But if you look in your episode 2, because that's what we're doing it for, I think, or Gary's mod, but it doesn't matter. You just I compile them in episode 2, and they can work in any Source engine game. So this first path here in the QC file is relative to your models file, a folder. So you go Half-Life 2, episode 2, ep2, and models. So in here, I've got their aura/exteriors. So if I go into models, aura, exteriors, cart 1. So you got the path name there, and then that's the file name. See, and it puts out all these files. It's like the model of physics and other crap. I don't know what it does. And then the materials is the same thing, but it's relative to your materials folder. And so in your material, you've usually got materials, models, then aura, exteriors, cart. So that one, like, don't put models in this, or it'll try to make another models folder. But you put models in this one, because that's model name is the models folder, materials is the materials folder, or CD materials. I think that's current directory or something, materials. And then it goes, this one you don't have to put the file name on this one either, because it looks in well, in your whatever you're using, if you use an XSI or whatever, you'll have to set a material name for the model. So in Blender, I've got the material here. I've called the material cart001 underscore 001. So when I export this, and if you want to have a look at it, you can have a look at the export. See how it's got triangles and then cart001, because that is, it assigns that material to the vertices. So if you export it and your material's fucked up, you can go into your SMD file and change that material, and that'll change the material that it exports to in source. You don't really need to know that at the moment. But in your modeling stuff, your material name, when you export it, will export, and it has to be the same as the material name in your QC file. Otherwise, it won't work. Scale, I just did that because it was off scale, but you don't really have to worry about that. If you put, I'll try and get my other one. Didn't work. There we go. See, so you can see you were pretty small, because I've exported that from source, and so that's the right size. So if I had to scale this up, hold on, I got that activated. Scale it up 5 times. That's how big that is. So let's just scale it 2. Scale 3. Oh. So I've scaled it up 4. I've scaled it up to about that size apparently. Looks a bit big. Didn't look too big there. Maybe just pretty big. Whatever. So yeah, when you export that, when you get that object file, I'll upload it with the rest of the model files when I upload the rest, and that way you can check your scale better. Anyway, then after that in your QC, are you following so far? Alright. In your QC file, when you export your models, you've got to make a physics model. See how that's a really simple model? I'll do it for now. That's what the engine uses to calculate all your physics interaction and like what the player can jump on and where the bullets collide and stuff like that. So you want to make that really simple, because if you put that in there, it wouldn't work. It'd overload it and it'd be really crappy. So you got to make a secondary model that's really, really simple, and I usually call it PHY for physics, and I call that one REF for reference, just because they're up in the side here. Just because it's easier when you're writing out a QC to write REF rather than wagon underscore 001 underscore reference mesh or some shit. So I just go phi and ref. And in Blender, I don't know what it is in your modeling software, but in Blender you have to shade it smooth and give it the same material as that one. So I've got cart001 in the materials here. I'll go on that. It's cart001 as well. Some things also require you to unwrap it, which you don't have to use seams or unwrap it any specific way. It just has to have UV data. But in Blender that doesn't seem to be the case. Doesn't seem to need it. So you got reference and physics model. I mean, no, the other way around. That's your physics model, and that's your reference model. And in your QC, you have to give your model a body. So you go $body, name it. Usually you just put whatever you want there. That's just the name that's going to come up for it in Hammer, and then your SMD file. So if you're going to do this all official and how you're supposed to do it, you're supposed to give it that crap and do it ref.smd. and all that shit. But you don't really need to. All you need to do is write $body, the name of it, and the exported SMD file that you're using, which is just ref. Static prop is so it compiles with a static prop, so you can use it as prop static. It doesn't. Yeah, that's only if you want it to be prop static. If you want it to be prop physics, there's a whole other bunch of shit you have to give it physics properties and tell the engine how to interact with it and all that stuff, which you can look on the Valve developer site for that. It'll tell you how to do it. Sequence, everything needs to have a sequence because it needs to tell the engine which frame to play. Since this is static and it doesn't have a sequence, you just use the reference mesh because it's got no animation information at all. So same with the body one, you've got your sequence, telling $sequence, saying it's a sequence, naming the sequence idle because it's not doing anything, it's just idle. You can call that whatever you want, and then ref because it's using the ref.smd. Again, you can put .smd there if you want. I used to put it there just so I'd remember what was what, but I'm used to it now. Then you go into your collision model, which is your physics model. You don't have to name it because it knows it's a collision model, so you go just write $collision model phi for physics. And because that's actually, before I go further, that's another thing with your physics model. They have to all be convex meshes. Like, see how, like, if I was to get one of these, say I got this wheel. Wait, I'm in the wrong one. See, if I got this wheel and put it out like that, that would make it concave. Because, yep. See how you can go inside the mesh there? That bit there is all concave. You can see down here. That's concave. And it won't measure it. It won't compile that. When it compiles it, that'll be out like that. Because it only like it casts rays around them. It doesn't actually do any concave stuff. So if you want a concave model like I've got with this one, you can see the physics model there. It's concave because you can go inside it. You need to make each mesh. You need to make the entire mesh out of different concave meshes, and put them all together so that it makes the concave mesh. If you know what I mean. Following that? Does that make sense? Alright, cool. If you're making something simple like a cube, it doesn't really matter. But in your QC file, you have collision model physics, and if you want it to be concave, you've got to do little curly bracket open, $concave bool, which is 1, like a boolean value, and then close your curly brackets. That just tells it that you've got multiple objects in there, and you want it to use that as your concave collision mesh, and you want to keep it as simple as you can. Again, where are we next? Oh, and surface prop. You don't need surface prop, but if you like, because it's wood, and I want it to be a wood solid, that tells the engine what decals to put on it when it gets hit, and how it should sound, and if it's going to be a physics prop, if it should break, and how it should give, and all that. You can find all the details on that on material surface properties. Yeah, material surface properties. If you ever can't find that, just Google for VDC $surface prop, and it'll give you a little link, and you'll be able to find it through that. But you can see you got all this stuff. So you got, like, concrete, rock, gravel, chain link, metal, seafloor, car. You can fiddle around with these, see what they all do. And then you got wood. I used wood solid. Probably could have used wood plank as well, but it might break. And you can change all that stuff too, but you can learn about that later. If you're just going to be making static props now, that's really all you need. Is the model name, materials, the directories. You don't need scale if you have it the right scale. And if you do put scale in, always make sure it goes before the reference and physics model, because it'll only scale when it reaches that scale line in the code. So if I, for instance, put that underneath the reference model and then I recompile, so yeah, the reference model is tiny and the physics model is big. So that's what I mean. You got to it finds that line and then it starts scaling. It doesn't scale the whole thing. So make sure that's up there. And also now with your textures, you got to have the special valve format for compression, and so the engine can read it. So, do you use GIMP or Photoshop, or what texturing program do you use? Okay, I don't think I've got that installed. Nope. I have used that. They've got a plugin for it, so I'll show you what you got to do in GIMP. I'll close that for starters. There is a plugin. You just got to go find it. I think it'll be on somewhere, probably on the developer wiki. It'll probably have that there. But you've got the PNG that you gave me, which is good. That works. And we'll just drop that in GIMP. This will pretty much be the same as Photoshop, I assume. I'm just going to save it as you can save this as whatever you want, because later on we're going to make a file. Actually, no, I better do that first. That'll make more sense if I do that first. When you go, there we go, that's it. So when we go to our materials, we're in episode 2, materials, aura, exteriors. Wait, no, material, that's stupid. I want materials, models, aura, exteriors, cart, and then you see you got this VMT file. When the model viewer looks for a material, it looks for the VMT file, and the VMT file has to have the same name as your modeling program has. So yeah, that's got cart001 in my material. If I go in there, it's got cart001.vmt. So it's always looking for that, and you set that in the QC. That's what that bit there is looking for. No, that's looking for the folder cart001. So the QC doesn't actually the QC doesn't say anything about which material to use, unless you give it skins, and that's another kettle of fish. But so it doesn't. That just tells it where the folder is. Doesn't tell what material to use, and then the model file, the SMD file that you exported, tells it which material to use. So if I was to change this to cart002, and then go back to here, it would lose it. Doesn't know what's going on. And if you go into model, it'll. Oh, nope, it crashed on me. Yeah, that's what it's supposed to look like. It comes up with that shit. And you go into model and it'll say model attempted to load one or more VMTs it can't find, which tells you it's looking for the wrong thing. So you go back into there and you change it. Just change it to cart1. And it's good again. Within the VMT, you've also got to write some stuff in here. With models, you'll only ever use vertex lit generic. This defines which shader it uses. So each different shader has different features. Like for brushwork, I think they just use unlit generic, and there's like a bunch of different shaders. But this is all you'll ever use for models, vertex lit generic, and there's no $sign in front of it. Then you got curly brackets, and it has to be on the next line or it won't work. And then on the next line you got in this, all I've got is base texture because there was no normal map. So all I've got here is $base texture, and then you've got your path that's relative to your materials. So it's materials, models, aura, exteriors, cart1, and then you tell it which VTF file to use. So cart001 diff, cart001 diff. If I were to change this and not change that, it'd freak out on me. But you can see down here, it's still got the loaded VMT, shader vertex lit generic, and it's still saying, yes, we've found the VMT, but obviously it can't find the texture. So if that ever happens, all you've done is you put probably the wrong path in here, or you've named this file wrong, or in Explorer you've named that file wrong. So that's when you're troubleshooting that. This is another thing that you should look on the... Oh, someone's been talking. Oh yeah, I don't like that program. Because if you just with GIMP, you just use the one, and it's much easier. I think Photoshop does it too, but yeah, you can use that. Yeah, I will. I'll leave it on my I'll leave it on my fucking live stream. Now when you go and do your material, just look in here in the Valve wiki for VMT. I think that's what I usually look for. Yeah, that'll tell you most of the stuff. Shader parameters, I think that's what you want. Yeah, that's what you want. This shader parameters will tell you exactly all the different stuff. So you got base texture, which you've already used. You can also, like we had surface prop in the QC, surface prop wood solid. You can also change that in the VMT. I think the VMT overrides the QC. I'm not sure. Because if you put different skins, you can change the surface prop between skins. I think. I'm not sure. Yeah, I'm pretty sure you can. And then I don't know what the hell detail is. Model, yeah, all this other stuff, that's all extra crap. But for now, all you need to know is base texture and bump map, which is pretty much the same as this one. All you write, bump map is your normal map, if you ever do a normal map. So it'll be the same as that, because you'll have it in the same folder. And then I'll usually just go underscore nor instead of underscore diff, because it makes sense. And that's your normal map. It'll just assume and that'll work the same way as base texture does. And when you go into your model viewer, you have to go to render normal mapping down there. Because you haven't got a normal map, it doesn't make any difference. But if I load up another model that I've got a normal map on, see that? I've got specular on this, NVMAP, which is reflection specular, but because I haven't got normal mapping, it just goes, because the specular map, which I'll show you in a second, uses the alpha texture from your normal map. So at the moment, this isn't loading in my normal map, so it's not loading in my specular map either. So if I click on normal mapping, it'll load in my normal map and my specular map, which will fix it up. And you can see on the side up here, there's, it's normal mapping properly, and there you go, that's a bit better. You can see there it's normal mapping properly. So you gotta remember to click it on normal mapping and thingo. Back to that. What are we up to? Bump map, that's right. Bump map. Specular is another thing entirely, because you've got two different types of specular that you use, which is Fong. I don't know if I've got a model with Fong on it. No, I don't think I've got one with Fong on it. But Fong is just like plain old like Blinn or what's the other one? It's just normal specular. It's Cook, Blinn, Toon. I don't know. Blinn or Fong is really the only ones you really know. In Source they call it Fong. It's just that normal old white, like it is in Blender here. You can see it's just a white reflection kind of thing. Kind of just makes it look shiny. Whereas you've also got EnvMap, which uses engine-generated reflections, which are static reflections. So if you were to go in here, if you wanted to use, we'll go EnvMap first because that's the easy one. Are you following so far? Is this too much? I think Gmod can use Fong. I'm pretty sure it can. That archway I did had Fong on it. Alright. So if you wanted to use EnvMap, which is environment map, you'd go $envmap. And so you're saying it's, I haven't done this for a while actually. I think it's EnvMap, and then you go, so you're telling it to use the environment map, and then you go tell it which one to use. So you got to go env_cube map, because that'll tell it just use the nearest cube map, which is an entity which you place in Hammer that generates a static reflection cube map, and then the model uses the closest cube map entity to tell it which one to use, to tell it which reflections to use. But that's more mapping stuff. They can worry about that. It's just for fake reflections, EnvMap. And so you got env map, env cube map, and then you have to put in this one here, normal map, alpha, env map mask, bool. So that's a mouthful, that one. Normal map, alpha, env map mask, and then I'm pretty sure you have to put a bool in there. So that tells it to use the alpha channel of your bump map for the specularity, because it's only a black and white image. You can also, instead of doing that, if you just want to have a completely different one, you just go env map mask, and then you'll put in your spec texture there. You can do that if you, well, that's supposed to be an E. You can do that if you really want to. But for like performance and just like simplicity, you're better off just putting it in the alpha channel of the bump map, which you should be able to do in Photoshop. Like Photoshop can do it. I don't know if you know how to, but you just make a black and white image, and then when you save it, you save that to the alpha channel. In GIMP, you'd have, actually let's do it. I'm just going to do a really shitty normal map on this. Actually, I better grayscale it first. This is a bad idea. Contrast up a little bit. Map, all map. Make it a really disastrous one. Alright, so I've got a normal map, and then I'm going to change this to a specular. Source really likes just black and white, like very little grayscale, I find. I'm going to go like that. That looks alright. So we've got our normal map on one layer, which is RGB. It's got, you know, red, green, and blue channels, and then you got the alpha map, which will be your specular map, which is only using black and white, so it's only using one channel. So we'll go save as. Yeah. Alright. And I'll go cart 001. No. And this is the GIMP one. I don't know how it'll be in yours, but I always go 8-bit RGB A 8888, because I assume that's 8 bits for each channel, because you got RGB, which will be your normal map, and then A, which is your specular, and you go use layer as alpha channel, your specularity, and now okay, I'll save it up. And now when I go into my VMT, I'm going to change that back to normal map alpha and map mask 1. Yeah. There you go. You can see that popped up. If I turn the normal map off, it'll go all reflective because it's got normal map. It's not got no normal map or specular map to tell it where to reflect from. Go normal mapping and it looks all bumpy and shit. And you can see it's reflective. That's env map mask. That's the environment map. So if I was to go and change this to a Fong shader, this is a little bit more complex. You've got to put on Fong 1, and then you got to give it a Fong boost because the Fong is really shit. I'll usually go 1. I think that's a float, so you can go like 4.689 or something. You know, I'm pretty sure it's a float. So I'm just going to go 1. And then you have to give it Fresnel. I think it's Fresnel, I don't know. You got to give it ranges to tell it how to reflect on glancing angles. So you got to go Fong, Fresnel, or Fresnel ranges. And this one, I usually look up. I think you got to go square bracket and then quotation marks. And the first one, like this has got three floats in there. The first one I think is a straight angle, like if you're looking straight at it, it'll give how much reflection you want when you're looking straight at. Like if you were perpendicular to the plane, looking straight at the plane, how much light should be reflected back at you. So I'm just going to go I'm going to put 1 in all of these just so you can see. This one is so it's like a 45-degree angle. So if you're looking at the plane from a 45-degree angle, how much light you want reflected off. And then the next one is the glancing angle, when you're really like looking at it, and the anisotropic filtering, whatever it is, anisotropic filtering is like blowing the texture out, how much reflection you want then. I'm pretty sure that's how it works. So I'll save that. No, fuck something up. Fong boost. I'm gonna look this one up. It might also be that they should be out there. Yeah, there you go. So you have to have the ones quotation marks and then square brackets. And you can see right now, as I'm looking directly at it, it's reflecting a lot of light. And then you've got the normal map and the specular map that are telling it where not to reflect. But if I then go and change this to a 0, it's got no light at all when I'm looking directly at it, because I've told it not to reflect light directly back at me. But if I go diagonal, move the light around a bit. No, maybe not. Maybe I've got the wrong idea about this shit. Yeah, there you go. There's a little bit there. You can see that. Some kind of 45-degree angle to that. I might be totally incorrect about this, but this is how I see it. Where did it go? You can hold down Control and move the and right click, Control and left mouse to move the light, by the way. So you can see there's Fong going on there. But if I was to change this and go no more Fong, then there's nothing, because it's not. I've told it not to reflect it. Now if I go really perpendicular to it, this usually only works on nice round edges, I think. I'll try the wheel. Yeah, I think this is really only for nice round smooth edges you ever get this one working, but it's like a glancing angle. So if you go like, if you go 1 1 1, it looks really wet. See, it looks all wet. So say you only want a little bit, so you want the light to be affecting it somehow. So I'd go 0.2, maybe 0.5, and then 1, because I can't see it anyway. So it doesn't look wet too much, but you got a little bit of there, and then when you go on a 45-degree angle, you won't really be able to tell, but yeah, you can kind of see this. It looks kind of more wet there now because I'm on a 45. That's how Fong works, but really all you need to know is you just got to put those 3 lines in there, and I'll usually just go 0.25, 0.5, 1. Like that usually works pretty well if I don't want it to be too horribly wet and just a little bit reflective, a little bit fongy. There's heaps of other shit you can do in that as well. You can do rim lights, all this crap, Fong exponent, and you can put exponent. Exponent defines where it should be sharp Fong and where it should be like blurry Fong, so where it should diffuse over the surface and where it should really reflect hard. Like you can see here on Alex's lip, she'd have quite white there on her Fong exponent. You don't really need to know this shit though. You can learn that later. I think that's really all you need to know. So we'll just go over it again. You following? It's following so far. Okay. Yeah. We'll go yeah, so you got your QC and you got to set your model name. You have to tell them what the name of the output model would be. So let's just go, this is output. This is output. Actually, that's not really output. That's a reference. So you got your model name, tell it the directory all the way up, and that there is the name of the model files that'll be spat out. So that's an output when you compile it. And then you got your materials, which is just an internal reference point for the model to say the directory of the material it's in, but your exported file, your SMD file that you export, tells it which material to use. So that's your reference point. Scale, that just tells the compiler to scale it up. You really should avoid using that though. You should always export your models at the right scale, because scale can fuck shit up sometimes for no reason. Then you got your body. For now, just use body. You can also use model, but that's more for skeletal meshes and more complex meshes. So just for now, just use body. So you got the body that you're using, telling it to name it cart. Usually they'll write studio on all the tutorials. Will write studio because it's some kind of tradition. And then so that'll be input. That's the SMD file. And then static prop, that just tells the compiler to use static prop. You don't always need to put that in if it's going to be a physics prop, but you can learn about that later. Sequence, need to have a sequence because it tells it what frame to be at. And since we've got no frames, we're just using the reference model as the frame. So that is also input. You got to call it idle because it's an idle animation. If you were going to have, like, you could have several sequences here if you're going to have an animation. So you'd have sequence idle ref, and then you'd have sequence walking, which would be an animation SMD, which you would also export, and then sequence jumping, but that's, other shit. And then you got collision model, physics, which is also another input. So your collision model, don't need to give it a name, and then physics, which is your physics.smd. I'll put an SMD on there too. And then for mine, it's concave. And remember, you have to have all the separate convex objects to create one concave physics mesh, and have a boolean behind that concave, so it's 1 for true. And then make sure these curly brackets are always on their own line, because sometimes with some of them the compiler doesn't like it if it's all on one line. Some of them it does. I'll just keep them on separate lines just in case. Surface prop, you don't need to put that in because Source will just make up a default plasticky sounding one, but because I want it to be wood, surface prop, and that's in the material surface properties on the Valve developer thingo. And there's heaps of other ones too, like if you go QC commands, there's like stacks of QC commands you can put in there for more complex stuff. A bunch that you'll never use, and a bunch that aren't listed here that are really important that you really should know. That you just got to troubleshoot and Google for stuff that you need to know. This whole community site is like pretty crap. That's a bit of an index. So yeah. So just whenever you're making a model, just kind of figure out what you want to do with it and see if it can be done. Usually it can be done, but it just takes a lot of troubleshooting. I'll leave that how it is. Actually, I'll comment them out. I usually use Notepad++ for this, but I didn't want to today. And then that's our SMD. Then you got to have your VMT file as well, which you can literally just go bass and bump. That's all you really have to put in. You got your bass texture and your bump texture. But with this model, I wouldn't bother putting a normal map on this model. I just did that for the hell of it. Like, that's fine without it. But I'll leave that in there, comment it out, just so you can see it. And fuck, I really should have left the rest of that shit in there too. Whatever. I didn't. And that stuff you can look up on shader parameters. That'll tell you. Like, there's more stuff as well. There's heaps of other crap. But yeah, Fong, env map, bump map, normal map is really all you need to know. Base texture. Yeah, and you can also set skins and other crap, but learn that later. Yes. I'm going to save all this stuff in that folder. I save mine as well. Is just good from tutorials telling you to. That's supposed to be an R, that T, but there's usually like model source and material source. So that's where I put all my. You can't see it there. Like model source, that's model source there. I'm gonna rename that. Eat a dick then. Model source, and that's got like your exported SMDs and your QC file. And also this text document here is one that you can get from the net, but I'm gonna upload it as well. All it is a shortcut, a bat file that tells go to the SDK, the Windows set SDK archive bloody directory, whatever, and then find studio model.exe, which is your exporting, your compiling thingo, and then a bunch of other crappy settings, and then pause so that you can see, because usually if you don't have pause there, it'll just go blah and just disappear, and then you're like, well, if I got an error, I don't know what the fuck it is. So you put pause there. But you can also use like Studio Compiler, which is one, and I think it's a Canon photo compiler or something like that. Like there's a bunch of GUI ones, but I don't use them. I just use that because I'm old school and shit. Well, really that also. And then your material source is where you save your material files. So I'm going to put that in there. I'm going to save it as GIMP's native. Get out of GIMP. So I've got, yeah. Anyway, so I've got, yeah, your diffuse and your normal map. I think that's it, man. For now. That should do ya. But I'm going to upload this stuff so you can put it in and have a look at it. And I'll put all those source files with it. And that reference file as well. Yeah. Don't need that. Alright. Cool. What? Hey, what? Yeah, wagon's done. Oh, you can do it with a wagon if you want, just to like get a feel for it. But yeah, for future models and that, because you need to do this to compile it to get an engine. I'll do it. Like if you send me the shit, I'll do it. But if you can do it yourself, it's much better, much easier. All right, that's it. Cool.